This is BBC News, the headlines. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the Taliban have made a commitment to allow American citizens and at-risk Afghans to leave the country after the end of the month evacuation deadline. But there's been continuing chaos and confusion at Kabul airport, with a massive crush of people at entry points as the deadline approaches. The latest US intelligence report into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic is inconclusive, according to US media reports. It looked at whether the virus could have been the result of a lab leak or passed from an animal to a human. The latest research in Britain into the efficacy of coronavirus vaccines indicates that the protection given by 2 doses of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccine starts to wear off within 6 months. Hello, welcome to our look ahead to what the papers will be bringing us tomorrow morning. With me are Natalie Fay, editor of the Nottingham Post, and John Stevens, the Daily Mail's deputy political editor. We'll say hello to them in a moment. But first, let's take a look at the front pages. And this is the headline in the Metro. The sea was closed. The Metro quotes Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab's defence at being on holiday as Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, saying, in hindsight, he should have come home earlier. The Eye also leads on Afghanistan, quoting UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, telling Afghans to forget the airport and get to the border. Nobody's coming. The Guardian front page features testimonies from Britons trapped in Kabul awaiting evacuation. The Telegraph focuses on the NHS, saying the NHS has drawn up plans to vaccinate 12-year-olds from the first week schools go back. COVID vaccines feature on the Daily Express front page as well, saying pressure is growing to speed up the rollout of booster jabs after research out today showing vaccine protection can wane after 6 months. Right, let's get started. Let's start by saying hello, John and Natalie. Right then, Hi. We're going to start with Afghanistan, of course. No other place to start. And we're going to start with the Eye front page. It's quite an arresting headline, actually. A kind of dramatic change of tone, I suppose, in a way. We've been focused so much on Kabul airport, and yet this headline, Britain tells Afghans to forget the airport and go to the border. John, talk us through this.
Yes, this is a warning that Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, gave to MPs this evening. He was talking about the problems at the airport. Obviously, we know that there's around 10,000 people there queuing up, desperate to get one of those Mercy flights, being run by the UK, the US and other countries. As we know, time's running out. The US has said it's going to leave the Afghanistan completely by Tuesday next week. And obviously it's going to take several days for all of their troops to leave and all of their equipment to go. So it means these flights filled with civilians are going to stop beforehand, and it's likely the Brits will have to stop those in the next couple of days. And so Ben Wallace is saying, if you've not been specifically told by officials that you're going to be able to get on one of these flights out of Kabul airport, then you're probably more likely to be able to get out another way. So the suggestion is, why don't you think about crossing a land border, going across to somewhere like Pakistan, and then kind of registering with the British Embassy and trying to get to the UK that way. And that's partly because we know how miserable it is there at Kabul airport. You've seen the scenes of people having to wade through sewage to be able to get to the gates. We know there's so many people there, and lots of them are going to be left behind. And also tonight we've had a warning from the Foreign Office. British citizens have been told to stay away from the area unless they are confirmed that they are going to be able to get a flight out because there's a terror risk.
Yeah, John, you talked us through all the issues there really brilliantly. And I mean, this is such a key line. It's on the front page of The Guardian too. Let's take a look at this front page. They basically have the same story with the same line, but some interesting details. Yeah, we've got it there. So the headline there is, "Head for the border. UK tells Afghans trying to flee." Natalie, what other details does The Guardian bring us?
Well, I mean, it's a message that comes from Ben Wallace, as has been pointed out already. And I think the main overriding thing here is utter confusion. We've seen so many powerful images today of people wading through sewage, young children clutching teddy bears, suitcases, wheeling them round. No one knows what's going on. And, you know, I doubt if these people are really listening to what Ben Wallace is saying. How is that message going to get through to them to cross to a land border instead and go to a processing centre in Pakistan? It's just utter confusion and panic for these people who are normal families just trying to get their families to safety. It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, I remember reporting, God, I mean, it must have just been a few days ago or weeks ago at the most. It feels like months and years ago, when the Taliban were effectively advancing across the country. One of the big strategic points that they landed on was effectively securing Afghanistan's border, securing the major trade routes, the major roads. And that was a huge step in the Taliban advance. This was before any thoughts were turning to Kabul, John. But that just shows that this idea of a simple alternative plan to head to the border is far from easy.
No, and I think Ben Wallace was recognising that in his comments. Some of the MPs who were there said that, you know, he was very reluctant to make the suggestion. He was just saying, even though this isn't going to be an easy route out, it just might be slightly safer. And we've got to remember that a lot of those interpreters who so bravely served the British troops over the last 20 years, a lot of them aren't going to be close to Kabul. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to get to Kabul airport. That actually just practically, it might be easier for them to get to one of these land borders where the Taliban isn't concentrated, where there aren't so many queues of people, that it just might be more likely that's their chance to get out.
And Natalie, just want to return to you. Earlier on, we spoke to the Mayor of Bristol, actually. He's putting his hand up saying, we want to take in some Afghan families. And I just wonder, in your part of the world, what sense you get from your readers about those kind of initiatives?
Well, actually, they're really open to it. And, you know, they're welcoming these people coming to our country, and then we can offer them a safe haven here for the time being, or indeed if they want to stay. And I know the Nottingham City Council has been very proactive in welcoming refugees, not just now, but in the past as well. And they're making space for them and getting ready. And we've seen pictures of them landing at Birmingham Airport, which is fairly nearby to us. And, you know, they will be safe here and they're welcomed here. And, you know, I think maybe people think that everyday people might be quite hostile to this, but in fact, they're not. They really want to help. I've seen among our readers almost a change in their attitudes. They want to help these people and they're welcoming them in and hope they can be safe here for the time being.
Yeah, and we get a bit more detail on numbers. Let's go to the front page of The Independent. And it's worth taking a moment, obviously, just to reflect on the main picture there, which is Sarah Story and her brilliant achievements. And we will come back to that a little bit later on in this paper review. But the headline underneath, UK races to rescue 2,000 in final hours of airlift. John.
Yeah, so this is some figures that provided by some working at the Ministry of Defence today, saying that they think it's about 2,000 people who worked either as interpreters or in other roles for the British government will be unlikely to be able to get out of the country. And we've known that, you know, the rollout, trying to get people out of the country, the numbers really have picked up after the last couple of days. We've seen about 2,000 people a day being flown out on those massive military transport planes. But obviously, as I've mentioned, you know, not everyone is near Kabul, and it's quite likely that a lot of people aren't going to be able to get out of the country. And I think, you know, we're just going to see over the next few months now, does the Taliban make it easy for these people who've not got out yet to leave or not? We obviously heard those comments yesterday where they were saying that they were concerned about a brain drain, that they were okay with foreigners like British people and American people fleeing the country, but they didn't want all the most intelligent, all the most kind of the professional groups being able to leave the country. And so, you know, the Taliban has been very good at saying things are different. It's not the old Taliban, it's a new Taliban. I think the test will come in the next few weeks to see whether people who weren't able to get out yet are able to leave the country under their own free will.
Yeah, interesting. John, just while I've got you on your kind of deputy political editor hat on, and I suppose the UK's standing in the world in all this. We had yet another briefing earlier on from the United States. Very little mention of international partners, other than to say it needs to be an international agreement with what happens next, with holding the Taliban to account, etc., etc. But in terms of that G7 plea for an extension of deadlines and things like that, and essentially leaders in the West being rebuffed, we're 24 hours or so, 48 hours on from that G7, and not much coming of it. What's the feeling about that in Westminster now?
I think the feeling was that obviously things didn't go particularly well. We saw that 6 of the countries in the G7 seemed quite united in the feeling that we did need some sort of extension. But obviously Joe Biden was quite clear that he wasn't going to offer that. And I think there are concerns in Whitehall about this kind of distance between the US and the UK. Obviously, a lot of people thought when Donald Trump left and Joe Biden came in that it would herald this new era of closeness, that America was back, as Joe Biden said. But he just looks quite isolated. And I think the concerning thing for the UK will be, they've obviously said that, you know, the Taliban needs to do all these things. They need to stop the country becoming a breeding ground for terror. They need to protect people's human rights. They need to let girls go to school. I think the question will be, how much leverage do we actually have over them? You know, 2 of the countries that seem to be much closer to Afghanistan are China and Russia. Obviously, we know that they've not got the best records themselves and maybe aren't the best people to be pushing Afghanistan in the right direction.
John, that's fascinating. Right, we're going to leave Afghanistan for a moment. We may well come back to it. But I want to hit the front page of the Daily Telegraph now. Story about COVID, vaccines and the NHS. The headline is, NHS draws up plans to vaccinate 12-year-olds. Natalie, will you talk us through this?
Yeah, I mean, not overly surprised to see this front page, although it is an exclusive for the Telegraph. We all knew it was coming. I just think we didn't think it would be coming quite so soon. It seems to be being sort of rushed through ahead of the new school term, which starts in a couple of weeks across most of the country. And I think the interesting thing about this article was the fact that it's been made very clear in there that children in that age bracket do not have to seek the consent of their parents to have the vaccine. And they're using the kind of model of young girls who can take contraception without their parental permission as well. And that's the kind of model they're using for the coronavirus vaccine as well. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy over this because it's unclear whether the benefits of having the vaccine outweigh the risks of that age group contracting coronavirus. Although apparently the Telegraph says there is a new study coming out with some new evidence to prove that the vaccine is hugely beneficial for this age group. So it's all new. There's going to be a lot of parents who are probably quite concerned and want more information about it. There's a rare side effect mentioned in the article of inflammation of the heart, which can come apparently with a second dose, although that is rare. And as I say, it's all new, it's all being researched. There's a lot of evidence still to be produced and read. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of questions from parents, I think. And you might get some parents who come out in the future saying, well, my child came home from school and said they had the COVID vaccine today and they didn't know anything about it. Could happen.
Interesting issue, isn't it? Well, in June, it says the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency approved the Pfizer jab for 12 to 15-year-olds, but further research on the safety of the jab in this age group is to be published soon, which I guess, John, is why they're getting these plans in place.
Yeah, and at the moment, these are just plans. So that's what the government's saying tonight, that the NHS is working out with local trusts how they might possibly deliver the jab to 12 to 15-year-olds if they do decide to go ahead. But for the moment, the JCVI, who give the ministers the recommendations on which different age groups and which different types of people should be getting the jab, they've not yet made a decision on whether all 12 and 15-year-olds should be given them. At the moment, it's just those children with underlying health conditions. But the NHS getting their local teams ready to deliver it will make a lot of people think that this is possibly a foregone conclusion, that this is going to come down the tracks quite quickly.
Yeah, that's what it possibly feels like from that front page there of the Daily Telegraph. Right, we're going to go to The Guardian now. We have already visited The Guardian, but we're going to go on a different story. This is about tasering and the police. And this has been around today, but The Guardian have put it on their front page for tomorrow. Natalie, do you want to just tell us what's in this little snippet on the article on the front page there?
Yeah, so it's just a small article on the front, like you say, and it's the police use of tasers is coming under harsh scrutiny, and it's a study by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, who are saying that taser stun guns are used more likely on black people with more prolonged use. And obviously, as we know, tasers can be quite harmful, and this raises the issue again of race issues in the police. And things like stop and search, taser stun guns, all those kind of issues coming to the fore again. I think a lot more research needs to be done into this, and the report is quite inconclusive. But, it's worrying, and it's raising all those issues again. And we've got community groups quoted on the front page there saying that officers are misusing the weapons and getting away with it, which is obviously quite a big accusation to be levelled at the police.
Yeah, police chiefs attacked the findings as vague and out of date, it says here in the Guardian. John, what do you make of it?
Yeah, so the figures are actually quite small that they've sampled. I think it's about 101 cases out of a total of 94,000 uses of tasers over 5 years. So obviously it's a small number that the IOPC is looking at here. However, it does look quite concerning that obviously we know the dangers that are possible with tasers, and we know that black people are more likely to be tasered, but this further says that black people are also more likely to be tasered for longer, which is obviously quite clearly more dangerous.
Indeed. Right, let's go to, we've avoided it for too long, basically the picture that is on several of the front pages. We can almost pick any of them. The Independent is the nice one. That is Sarah Story flying the flag, as she does pretty much every Paralympic game. She's absolutely brilliant. Natalie, why didn't you tell us what she done now?
Yeah, absolutely amazing story, as you say. I mean, Dame Sarah Story, she's probably one of the greatest British athletes of all time, isn't she? I mean, I was reading she's got 26 medals overall, and 15 of those are gold medals. It's just absolutely unbelievable. She's absolutely smashing it out there, representing Great Britain. And today she broke her own world record, which is amazing in itself, and won another gold medal in the 3,000 metres individual pursuit. So just amazing. I think you could probably say she's unstoppable, and she looks rightfully very pleased with herself there on most of the front pages today. It's just amazing. A great thing for Team GB, start to the Paralympics, and also a great thing, in Japanese society, which I've also seen that they're hoping that the Paralympics will help to make Japanese society more inclusive and aware of disabilities and what people with disabilities can do. And Dame Sarah Story is showing us all what she can do. It's amazing.
Yeah, John, Sarah's story is quite some story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the amazing thing about her is that she's done 8 Paralympic Games, which I find quite hard to comprehend. She started back in 1992 was her first game. She used to compete in swimming. She did 4 games. She won 5 gold medals. And I think at that point, if it was me, I would think I've achieved enough. That is enough. I'm just going to retire from this. But instead, she changed sports, went into cycling, and then has won 10 more medals across 4 more games. And it looks like that's not even the end of it yet. There's a couple more events she's got to go. So it looks like she's been picking up even more medals, which quite frankly puts me to shame and everyone else I'd have thought.
Absolutely right. And Natalie, let's just talk about the Paralympics more generally, because just like with the Olympic Games, a huge effort to actually get it going in the first place. Yeah,
of course. I mean, we're living in unusual times, as we all know, and the Olympics itself, which we've obviously had before, was quite a success. I mean, there was a lack of spectators, obviously, but I think everyone at home really got behind Team GB, and I hope we see the same for the Paralympics. I'm sure we will, and I'm sure it will be a great success. But obviously, there's the underlying worry of COVID, people catching it, all the tests the athletes have to go through, and the added mental pressure of that. And we saw that with Simone Biles. She was quite open about her mental health and dropped out of one of her events. And it is a lot of strain for the athletes, obviously, on top of everything they've been doing to get to this point, and then the added strain of everything with COVID as well, and the lack of spectators. It's a huge thing to go through, but, full respect to those athletes that are out there at the moment. It's absolutely amazing. And what I really enjoyed with the Olympics was seeing all those videos that we saw on social media of families celebrating back at home at odd times of the days and nights, and just seeing those real stories behind the athletes was just brilliant. So hopefully we'll see some more of that too.
And selfishly, from all newspaper editors around the country, it provides great pictures for the front pages of our athletes doing so well. Right, we will leave it there. Thank you very much, both. Right, that is it for the papers for this hour. Natalie and John will be back at 11:30 for round 2. Right now, though, it's time for the sport. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Bye-bye.